All right, so hopefully we've got audio now. Let me check on my phone and make sure if anyone's on. If you could check my audio, that would be awesome. They there was a software update to my computer, and all of a sudden everything is really messed up. Oh, okay, I can hear myself. I probably should have did that in the first place. Duh. Um, okay, so let me try this again with a headset that actually gives sound out. So I was giving thanks to a bunch of folks who'd reached out to me early on. I actually cleared 100 subs a week and a half ago while I was traveling, and I didn't realize it. And then I was setting up my my Saturday live today, and I got that little thing that goes bing. You passed 100 subs, and I looked at the date. It was like 10 days ago. I was like, oh, okay. So I actually have no idea how many people follow me right now, but I wanted to thank everyone. What I was saying before, there were a lot of folks who had reached out to me early in my YouTube and Instagram kickoff. The first two who reached out to me were Survivalist You, as well as Six Shooter Homestead and Prepping. And I wanted to thank those two in particular, one on the Instagram side, one on the more on the YouTube side, for reaching out to me. And they connected me with a bunch of other folks. God, it was a list I just had here. Papa Prepper in no particular order because I already wasted everyone's 5 minutes before. Uh, Papa Prepper, Jennifer Cruz, Be Charming, Be Ready Today, who kind of prays for my sons every other week, who are both on deployment. Asymmetrical, that's Michael, Greg from New York Prepper, Gray Man Prepping, whose name is Gray. Aha. And that's a neat name because he can kind of use it for two meanings. John from Prepper Nation has reached out to me a couple of times. The Angry Prepper, Jason in Manhattan, which was where I grew up. And I know the bigger channels, Prepper Nation and you know, the Angry Prepper, some of these large channels, they have. So I looked at, for instance, the Angry Prepper half an hour ago, and he has 90,000 subs. So if you do the math, because engineers like math, 1%. If 1% of his people email him any given day, that's 900 emails. That's insane. Like I get 400 or 500 at work, and it's crazy. So I can only imagine how busy the bigger channels are. So to those channels that helped, also I think there was, hold on, I had a few more I wanted to thank, and I want to be sure I cover them all. So Six Shooter, Papa Prepper, Jennifer Cruz, Asymmetrical, Prepper Nation, Be Charming, Be Ready, American Prepper, who's kind of kicking off his channel as well. Thank you for reaching out. Hey Jennifer, uh, Mom Survival, who's right now very soon expecting a baby, and she's still trying to do channels, and she just bought a new house. Very excited for you, by the way. Those of you who do pray and practice faith, please pray for her because she's got their first baby on the way, and I understand it was kind of a scary pregnancy a couple of times. So, fingers crossed for her. Appalachian, thank you for reaching out. Mother Prepper, MUTHA, and again, Angry Prepper, Prepper Nation, Jason and John, the big channels. I know it's hard for you guys. You guys get bombarded, and like Jason's a firefighter too, so like he disappears for 4 days and then he comes online. For the record, I was still laughing at his rant the other day. I was in tears on a conference call because I was listening on the side. Also, the Gadget Inspector, who is mainly on Instagram. I don't remember if he has a YouTube channel. We did a live the other day. And D9 from the great state of Texas. Survivalist You and D9 are fellow Texans. And it's really neat to hear their thoughts. So I wanted to thank all of those folks. And apparently, while I was gone, people were sending me messages saying congratulations, and I'm like, what did I win? Can I quit my job? And they're like, no. But Six-shooter had a raffle, and I guess he did a random chat, and I was on the road as I always am, hence roaming, and I won this. So he sent it in the mail. It got lost, and it finally arrived. So I'll do an unboxing. It is the Olight uh, Perrin Mini, and I pre-opened the box so I wouldn't cut my fingers on YouTube Live because that would be embarrassing. And it has the little strap thing, a headband. Okay, I thought it was something else. Oh, that's cool. I hadn't opened it yet. I just popped the box end open. So we will try this later, and I'll probably blind myself in the living room and annoy my wife, but that's okay. But anyway, I wanted to thank all those folks who reached out. I may have missed a few. Thank you all. I actually had a newer person who was moving into the preparedness community, and they had Instagram stuff in another type of channel. And they said, I'm really shocked at how open the preparedness folks are. He said, I went on TV. You look on TV and it's like, these crazy people with the tinfoil hat is the way they make us out. And he said, I'm talking to these guys and girls, and it's like, oh no. I mean, the blackout in Texas was a perfect reason. Hurricane Harvey, the riots, the floods, take your pick. This transcends politics. It should transcend politics and those kind of issues. This is about, oh, thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, I was super excited. Uh, I was so happy to hear him say that. And I found out I have a very large following, get this, in Argentina and Spain on Instagram. And also an airsoft community in the Ukraine and in Romania. And these kids, I'll put Instagrams of tactical stuff, hell holsters and firearms, and they'll tag me and they'll mention stuff. So it's been really cool to hear what these folks do and say in other countries. And the truth of the matter is, they're all collaborative. There's Canal Preparismo. He's in Argentina, and I because of the time difference, I miss him like 50% of the time. But he has really good stuff. He goes out in these little semi-arid areas and jungles of Argentina, and then he tries stuff. So it's really cool, and I'm glad to see a lot of newer people coming in, and a lot of younger ones. I have a lot of followers between 18 and 25, which I did not know either. And which is, a lot of folks are like, hey, some of your videos are very basic. That's why, because I want them to be reachable for everyone. Those of you with more experience is probably more a question of a refresher. And I do have one critic I want to thank. He pops in and out every blue moon. His name is Duh Big Cat. And especially if I do a political overview, he loves to throw challenges, and it's okay. Like I said, it's good to have some critiques, never disrespectful, very interesting points. So those of you who go on YouTube, go on Instagram, keep an open mind. It's not evil to disagree. It's if nothing else, it reinforces what you already believed, or you learn something new. But in any case, that was really cool. And so, that being said, thank you to everybody who's done all this stuff for us and helped me out along the way. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through some really weird news, because the news gets stranger every time I look at it. And I really don't know what to make of half the stuff I'm seeing now, especially when I'm calling guys who I know are still in the military, and they're like, dude, you have no idea. So the Navy just released footage from 2019 with 14 objects swarming, I believe, hold on a second here while I find that, the USS Omaha. Okay, now this is, I have family in the Navy who've retired. The Omaha is not an old ship. This is a high-end, high-tech vessel that's getting swarmed by things they've never seen before, and they were having a hard time tracking. And that's concerning. That UFO report is supposed to come out in the next week, if it hasn't come out already. And as an aerospace engineer, it's UFOs, spaceships, it's cool. That's why went to school for what I did, because space, right? But that's kind of scary because A, it's either something from somewhere else, which would definitely be weird, or even worse, there's a technology out there that somebody has that's capable of getting very close to things like our destroyers and aircraft carriers and Air Force bases. Now, to be fair, in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, people in Nevada constantly saw UFOs. And then you look at those pictures today and you're like, that's not a spaceship. That was a stealth bomber prototype. But it was 30 years before it went public. So people saw these weird things in the sky. And think about it, if you were back in the 1950s, planes, everything had a propeller. Jets were really new. And you look up and saw a stealth fighter, and it looks like a triangle and it's doing weird stuff, you think it was a spaceship. So hopefully these things we see are actually secret projects from the Air Force and the Navy, trying to get a technical advantage over other entities in the world. Because if it's from another planet or a country that doesn't like us, that's concerning. So it should be coming out soon. But the footage, let's see if I can cut and paste without screwing up everything here. If you want to see the footage, it's on MSN and on their technology page. Really crazy stuff. There was one where there was an F-15 was chasing some thing it saw. So anyway, so that's as far as the first of the weird news, UFOs out there. So if you have any thoughts on that, feel free to chat. I do hang out with physicists and like astronomers, and not astrology, which is Taurus and Pisces. I'm talking about people who actually study space. Um, if you throw a question I can't answer, I can ask one of them. So don't hesitate to shoot that out there. Um, so here's something else. So U.S. oil prices settled lower on Friday, following 5 consecutive session gains. This is on Market Pulse. So they settled a little bit lower. Now it's still elevated from where it was before. Pricing in Texas right now is about 250 to 275. When I went to Vegas a couple of weeks ago, they were almost 4. But you keep in mind, Vegas is in the middle of nowhere, so it either has to be pipelined or trucked into Vegas. California was very high too, and I think that's part of their tax structure. Friends, I think Six Shooter said his pricing was just about 10 cents higher than ours. So that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that, Jennifer. See, I love the live streams because you guys throw stuff at me, and I'm like, hey, now, this is interesting. So again, yeah, that's a good point. If this is a biblical episode, or something greater than us is occurring, it may be a way to condition people to be fearful of what they're seeing. So that's interesting. That's an interesting point. Be the only excuse to make sense to the secular world. That's possible. That's very possible. And that would probably, right. Otherwise, people would absolutely have a heart attack. Well, they'd have a heart attack either way if something otherworldly showed up and started running around the streets. If I recall correctly, did you ever notice in the Bible, every time Gabriel, Michael, one of the angels shows up, the first words they say to, whether it was Mary or to the ancients in the First Testament in the Old Testament, was, do not be afraid. So I did some historical reading, and they recorded an angelic height is 10 cubits. I don't remember the name of it, which if you translate to modern measurement is 27 feet. So if a dude showed up 27 feet tall, I'd be passed out, or I'd run away. So that would be yeah. The description of the views that the ancients had of these greater things, they were massive. by our standards. So yeah, if you saw a 27-foot tall dude, something popped up and was walking around, you're done. You'll either be passed out or run away. And they'll find some people hiding in the storm culverts because they freaked out completely. I mean, to be fair, Jennifer, people punch each other over toilet paper last year, so something like that happened. Yeah, that may be a way, and it could be things are happening, and that may be part of the prompting for the original Space Force. Was because they're trying to dedicate resources to try and understand this from a secular point of view. What scripture was that? I need to reread that. That would be freaky, though. A 27-foot tall, or whatever height the cubits convert to. And it's interesting the timing of the appearances, along with all the other struggles going on in the world. The timing of everything is very bizarre across the board. And again, even this, I don't know if you guys heard, but there was a court case in Europe that Shell, like Royal Dutch Shell, the Dutch oil and gas company that everyone knows about, lost a court case, and they have to be 50% carbon reduced globally by 2030. And they lost it in The Hague, which is in the Netherlands. It's their home country. So that means the drilling rigs, everything. So is that going to screw up oil and gas prices, or is it going to force these companies to kind of evolve? I'll tell you right now, I've seen Chevron, Shell, Halliburton, BP to a lesser extent, and I don't know as much about BP. A lot of these companies are already looking at getting into biofuels, biodiesel, ethanols. They're kind of changing into a holistic energy future. So this will be interesting. That's not something, this change isn't going to happen right away. That's going to take time. Isaiah 37:36. Okay, I'm going to look that up. God, I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've read that. To be honest, I was much younger. I may not have understood what I was reading. So I'm going to have to go back to that. Isaiah, do I have my little notepad here? Oh, well, it's in the live chat, so I can play it back for sure. But yeah, Assyrian soldiers. So the Assyrians would have been from Persia, which is modern day Iraq, which technically is Babylon, if I recall correctly. Did I do my geographic conversion right there? But yeah, yeah, that is. And that makes you wonder what's going on in the big picture. Why is this coming out? And why is it that America's the only country, and the Brits, who are talking about it now? The US, Britain, Australia, some of the NATO countries, a lot of countries are not talking about it. And granted, they may have other problems at the Earth level, but I find it strange that you're only really hearing it. I need to look at some of the international news about that unexplained aerial phenomenon. Now, what are they calling them now? AEOs, AOEs, unexplained aerial phenomenon, AEPs. They've changed it. Hold on a second. And there goes the Air National Guard. Oh, he's way up there. Yeah, the Dyes Air Force Base is maybe an hour from where we are, and they use the local airfield for touch and goes for training. And out of nowhere, you'll get like fighter planes or B-52, or not B-52s, C-130 show up, and they rumble the house because they come low. And of course, corgis don't like rumbling, so that little one will come running in the yard and bark at them. She chases them in the yard, which is funny because it's like the stubbiest dog known to man, and she's the one who wants to fight the airplane. But again, so keep an eye. I know we're kind of jumping back and forth, but keep an eye on the fuel prices. They look like they're going to level off, but with that ruling against Shell, you might see the energy companies take a hit, and as they try and comply with this new ruling, especially in Europe, um, it's going to affect their cost structure, and it's going to come back to mom and dad and all the rest of us trying to fill our tanks every day. So be sure that you kind of are paying attention to that, because it can affect your preparedness if you are trying to make sure your tanks are filled and whatnot. We had a wicked hailstorm. I put it on Instagram. I should have put it on YouTube, a short. I think I did actually. Um, the hail south of us was about this big around, and it was breaking windshields. It killed some livestock, not the cows, the chickens, because chickens are God's dumbest creature, and it rains on them and they freak out, and then they drown in the rain. My son raised chickens for FFA, and he told me that, and I thought he was full of it. And I went to help him at the FFA barn, and there was dead. Okay, Q Kitchen. Hey, Q Kitchen. Thanks for joining us. I live close to Air Force Base in Washington. Oh, up Washington State has all sorts of strategic stuff, because you figure the Russians are just across the Bering Strait over Alaska. So you guys are like, you and Alaska are right there, and that's interesting. It knocks off your cell phone and internet. So the Russians, I don't know if you guys heard, the Russians announced a hypersonic rocket. So hypersonic is above Mach 5, if I recall correctly. So this thing's screaming. Um, I can probably say, without getting myself in too much trouble, that the US has had that technology for a hot minute. So they're trying to catch up to us. So a hypersonic rocket at that speed, if it was launched, say, in the Pacific, say they launched it over Japan or Hawaii to hit California, would probably make it there in 20 minutes. Not like an ICBM where it's like, the old War Games movie where they're like, oh, there's a launch in Russia, and then it's like an hour and 40 minutes for the thing to land on the US, or 3 hours or whatever. That thing's flying, and that's no pun intended. Those things are hauling. So there's some tech. It's funny you mentioned that, Q Kitchen, because I'm hearing a lot of strange stuff on the coasts, the cities, and I've noticed there's been a lot of, the Air National Guard, especially in spring and summer, you see a lot of activity, because that's when they do their 2 weeks a year, and they deploy and they train. And it freaks people out if you're not used to it, but if you've been in the Guard, you're kind of like, annual training time, have fun, guys. The coffee is going to be sucky for 2 weeks. Um, but there's been stuff in unusual times, so I don't know. All politics aside, I don't know if when they handed over administrations, if Trump's guys told Biden's guys, hey, look, this is what we're hearing. And some of Biden's people may have read it and went, oh, that's not good. And so in the background, you're seeing a lot of stuff being done in response to stuff that's happening. That's but knocking out phones and internet, that's really weird. That's new. Speaking of housing, guys, if you're trying to move right now or relocate, the housing market is not in the favor of buyers. Oh, great, that's comforting. Oh no, your kids are autistic. Okay, we've got autistic children in our circle, and I know that's a sudden strange stimulus is not cool. It does freak them out very badly, especially if they can't see it and rationalize it. That's tough. I'm sorry to hear that. And that's interesting, though, that it's knocking out. Does it knock out power? I'm curious about that, because I'm wondering. There's been a lot of reports about the Havana Syndrome, where our diplomats in Cuba were getting exposed to something that was making them nauseous, headaches, migraines, making them throw up, making them pass out. I'm wondering if we're possibly entering a phase of more focused attention to energy weapons. And when I say energy, I'm not talking Star Wars pew pew. I'm talking about focused microwave stuff that takes out electronics, stuff that takes out screws with your nervous system. The Army, if you search for it, has a Humvee that has a microwave transmitter, and this is public forum stuff, that if there's a riot, they can aim at the rioters and deploy it. And it actually gives the sensation of fire on the skin. And it makes people run, and then when they turn it off, after about 3 seconds, you normalize, and there's no residual damage, but it scalds the skin. And I'm wondering if all these, uh, yeah, uh, housing issues in all across the country. So we're getting triple whammy, right? We have, because the housing market, the typical evictions, foreclosures, stuff like that have been halted. You're not seeing a circulation of those homes. When they do come up on the market, because they're coming out so few and so rarely, their price is elevated. The typical homeowner or the typical person who flips home, like any one of us, can't buy the home. So corporations are gobbling them up. Right now, I'm hearing rumors that in one state on the East Coast, the largest buyer of foreclosed homes isn't private citizens nor a bank. It's actually an investment company. They're gobbling up what should be private property to use as. My youngest would get sick and had horrible migraines just as we moved here. It's not a fan. That's interesting. Now, your youngest, were they prone to the migraines before? Because that's an interesting thing. And again, that's the focused energy weapons I've been, and they're in mainstream media and fringe media. You can see it out there. It's not uncommon to use a focused energy weapon to cause someone to be sick. Actually, it's well known, and it was found out by accident back in the 40s and 50s. The Navy and the Air Force were converting to microwave technology to communicate and send signals, and people inadvertently stood in front of the microwaves, and they get knocked out, they get physical burns. Some guys get second-degree burns from the Navy antennas if they're not careful. Cause dizziness, cause nausea, unconsciousness. So that's strange that never bad when we lived in Florida, but you come up here or to where you are now, and you're not feeling great. That's interesting. Yeah, and if you're trying to find a new home to get away from stuff like that, you not only have the corporations gobbling up a lot of the stores you have, buildings. The foreclosures are on hold, the evictions are on hold. And then to add to that, because of the Suez Canal and the tariffs and all the other instability, there's still a lack of wood and shipping. I know people have been reporting buying wood. Six-shooter actually is in the lumber industry in the field, and there was like a 3-week span. He would put little 30-second shorts. He didn't have time to come home. He would like come home, shower, and go to work the next day. So that's going to be difficult. And what I'm afraid of is when they say, okay, you can now start evicting people. And we're going to have not only a flood of people who now no longer have a home, and we're starting to see it in Texas, but you're going to see houses that are not within the ability of people to buy or rent. And that's going to be a double whammy. I'm wondering about that. That's interesting. Let's move to Florida, to Washington. Could it be an altitude thing? I'm wondering if you're higher altitude, lower oxygen. You may, I'm sure you've talked to a physician by now. Maybe an oxygen supplement at times that may help. I don't know. It's speaking of that, homeowners increasingly pay above asking price for markets, and they mention Los Angeles. Good Lord, yeah, Los Angeles. So in certain states, including Houston, and Texas was always known for a robust real estate market. It's to the point that if I'm buying a home, I have to offer not only cash for whatever 200, 300, 400,000, but give the people who are residing there a 60-day rent-free stay so they can find a home, because they're struggling so hard to find their own home to go to their next relo. So if you've got to move, okay, a Q Kitchen, you may want to look into that. Maybe an oxygen, not a supplement like a pill, but you know what I'm saying, like a mask, like the athletes use, that may help. I'm not familiar with migraines as far as medically. Um, I have very good friends who are physicians and surgeons who could probably comment much more competently than I can. I'm just thinking as an engineer, pilots, they go too high, they pass out, no oxygen. So uh, that makes sense. You could get and if she's asthmatic, that's a problem too. So yeah, the housing market, that's going to be a challenge. And my fear is, if they pass the infrastructure plan, I think Biden's trying to replicate what Roosevelt did, which on the one hand might be the only play he has in this environment. But if you print a lot of money and you don't get it circulating the right way, you're going to create wicked inflation, and that's going to be bad. So watch the Fed, see what they do. I think the people they have in the Fed now are very hesitant to go pushing a lot of buttons because they're afraid it's very unstable. I would recommend, guys, and I'm no financial planner, so do your own homework. Try to have cash if you can. Investing in, some more stable stuff is never a bad thing. Uh, I was fortunate in that some of my investments post Rona took off. So I was able to put a little bit of cash on the side, and I'm sitting on it because I know I'm going to get taxed on it later. Okay, Q, and let me know, send me a message or something. Let me know how she feels uh, after, because I've heard of people going to higher elevations or changes in elevation and humidity, and it messes with them. And if she's sorry, I got a bug. If she's already sensitive, that's probably might be adding to what she's battling already, and it's causing those headaches. Um, and also keep in mind, if she's younger, it's stress, right? You've just put them in a new environment. My youngest son, he doesn't care. He's gone to Korea. He's in Hawaii now. It's all good, right? He's 100% cowboy. The oldest sister for years would freak out over change, and now she's become like her little brother, and they just go everywhere. So and yeah, it could be a little bit of a stress, a little bit of a physical environment change. So, but definitely, yeah, let me know. Shoot me a message. I don't know how you send messages, or you can. I guess you can comment on the video later and see if they were able to help her, because that would be great. Um, Last one, I was gonna throw you away, and now I can't find it. Eh, okay, so it looks like Wall Street is remaining stable despite inflation fears. Now, Pinball Preparedness, I think he was a financial advisor, so he can speak to this way deeper than I can. But keep in mind, if you put a lot of currency, the value of a currency in the modern world, right? In the ancient times, back in biblical times, it was gold and land. Now it's GDP, which is kind of gold and land, not really. So if the country's GDP is $10 trillion and you divide by so many dollars, that's the value of the dollar, or so many paper bills out there, that's the value. When you have the economy literally fall on its face in the world the way it did, and it's still growing, but it hasn't gotten back to where it should be, and you're adding lots of dollars, you have this much GDP, and you have all this dollars, it's division, right? The bigger your denominator is, the smaller the value of the equation. So if this number isn't growing fast and the number below is massive, or yeah, it's going to reduce the value of each dollar. So if they're pumping a lot of money into the economy, they have to be sure they get it into circulation, and it starts turning the machinery to get industries back online, get whatever things, so that the money is circulating and creating value, creating the necessary energy for the gross domestic product to grow. That'll keep the dollar strong. I'm kind of surprised although I know Biden was not a fan of the Keystone Pipeline, I'm kind of surprised he didn't allow limited drilling in the federal lands. That would have brought the oil price down. Now, granted, for energy sector guys like me, I'd be like, no, but in the bigger picture, to keep the economy kind of leveled off, It wasn't doing bad. They were doing okay till they hacked the pipeline, and I'm still freaked out about that. Just a note from what I saw in the news and from what I'm hearing, the reason Colonial shut down their IT department and the pipeline is because the hackers had gotten into their system and then we're trying to go upstream and downstream. So to define for you, there's a pipeline. Downstream would have been distribution to the people. Upstream would have been the Chevron shells, the fields themselves, and the refineries. They had gotten in at one point and were trying to go sideways. Fortunately, Colonial's IT department seemed to be, even though they got caught blindsided, they seemed to be on their game enough to realize, holy cow, that's going to be awful. And they locked it in and they limited the exposure. I've heard, and I cannot confirm, that the stupid flies, the hackers made a demand for Bitcoin or some kind of cryptocurrency. They were then paid, but then in paying them, they were able to track their IP and then took the money back and then crashed their server. And now they've gone dark. I mean, there are a bunch of theories behind that, but it wouldn't surprise me if the NSA, the Air Force, Navy got their tech people involved and said, let's figure out where this payment's going because the money has to go somewhere, and they followed it. They'd have been better off just telling them, drop 10 million of gold in the ocean and we'll come get it later, kind of thing. But the hackers have gone completely off the grid. There's been nothing said about them, so that's interesting. But keep an eye on those energy prices. As we get into summer, people are going to start traveling. People are going to start driving, and then your air conditioning is going to go up. For those of you living on the southern coast, they're saying it's not going to be as active. You don't have La Nina effects as much this year, so you're not going to see as many hurricanes, but they did say we could get a few. What we may see is a lot more rain across the country, and I can tell you in this part of Texas, it's unusually green. It's kind of cactusy out here in grasslands, and the yard looks nice, so I'm kind of happy. My dogs are happy, but that's going to be an interesting thing. Remember, hurricane season starts June 1st. They've already named one tropical depression somewhere, I believe, or they're about to. So it started early. This is the third year in a row. Make sure you have your preps for hurricane season. Among them, again, the basics, right? Food, water, medicine. Put together your important papers, because here's something that caught even some of my fellow guardsmen off guard, no pun intended again, down in Houston. He lived in downtown Houston in an area called, in the Braeswood area, which is by the big bayous, has those old buildings. It's really pretty. Well, the bayou overflowed during Harvey, and the morning before, or that evening at dinner, he went in front. His 23-year-old son or 22-year-old son had just come from college. They looked out the door, and the water was in the street. He said, okay, I'm going to put a stick in the yard, and this is kind of where the water is. His son woke him up at 4 a.m., so he scolded his son. He's like, why are you drinking so late? He's like, no, Dad, look out the door. The dog's freaking out. The water had come up to the door. He said his front yard from the street, the edge of the grass where he put the stick, to the front door was a good 20 feet and about a foot in elevation. It was already to his door. So they grabbed their kayaks, started loading stuff into the kayaks. By the time they were able to leave the house, it was waist deep. They were chest deep by the time they got to the hotel that was on a hill where they could check in. And they both got sick from exposure to the sewage. So if you don't have a bug out book or all your stuff saved on like some kind of hard drive, ziplock the hard drive, and you could do a CD. It won't get ruined in water, but I don't know how many CD readers there are around now. Or make a bug out book. Now, I did a video on YouTube where I explained kind of how I put one together, but essentially get a loose leaf binder with the stupid sheet protectors we used in high school and print important stuff and stick it in there. So if you have to leave the house, you go to the closet, the safe, wherever, you grab your pew, you grab your money, whatever you have, grab the books, stick them in the bag, and go and get out. If you know a storm's coming, keep your vehicles gassed up as well. Okay, because the power's going to go out, and guess what? We all talk about the EMP. Hurricanes are its own EMP. It just breaks everything. And then the gas pumps don't work. The pumps that do work are are usually limiting non-responder, non-National Guard, non-Red Cross, non-hospital. So yeah, Q, absolutely. Um, Save it to a flash drive, and what I would recommend, if you have it, either one of those the terabyte drives, or even the little USB, depending on how much stuff you save, um, Ziploc it. Or if you have a waterproof bag, like if you go canoeing or you go to the lake and you keep your phone in the bag, put the little hoo-ha in the bag and seal it up. That way, if you have to go through water, at least you've done everything you can to keep it from being ruined. Now, you could put it on OneDrive or iCloud or whatever online. One, it's someone else's hard drive, right? So it's not as secure, but Apple does a pretty good job, and so does Microsoft to an extent, of securing your private data. But if there's no cell phone and internet, you can't download it anyway. So you're kind of SOL. So I like to have both a USB drive, and I'll print more important stuff like your home insurance papers. That was a lesson I learned during Hurricane Ike. It hit Houston. We lived down there at the time. It got some damage on the roof. I couldn't remember where I put the paper. Oh, there you go. There you go. You can, yeah, just put them in a Ziploc to protect them from moisture. Or if you go to Academy, they have the little box in the boating section for phones or radio storage. It looks like a Tupperware on crack, and it has a rubber gasket and the little snappy things. And then it has a hook, and you can even hook it to your belt or hook it to your backpack, and you can go. And don't forget to update your drive and your book whenever you have a change of paperwork. So, like, you get your 2021, or sorry, 2022 home insurance or auto insurance, print it out, shred the old stuff, bring in the new stuff. A lot of the print centers like FedEx and UPS store, where you can do like the old Kinkos, they do copying and stuff, also have shredding. And you can pay them like $5 and they take your pile of stuff and they shred it, and you can watch them shred it if you don't have a shredder. You can do what I did the other day. I put the paper on the floor to shred it. My dog got it, destroyed it, which solved the problem. But yeah, look for your papers. So for instance, in my bug out book, I have uh, copies of driver's license, social security cards, um, a listing of jewelry and firearms. In the event, it gets stolen while I'm gone, I have to flee. But more importantly, home insurance, auto insurance, and I would print out a paper list of phone numbers, because if you're like me, I want to call my brother Tom. I go, call Tom, and Siri calls Tom. I just spilled my drink on my iPhone. It's still working. That's good. I call Tom, and it calls Tom. What you forget is what's Tom's number. So, my bro calls me and I don't have him in that phone. Or if my phone dies and someone says, "Oh, well, who do you want to inform?" And I'm like, I don't remember my brother's number. And then I feel like an idiot. So and I need to do a new one because everybody moved, of course, in my family. Um, Print out a physical list of ICE emergency contacts, your doctor, first aid. If you have scripts for the kids, because you said some of the kids may have scripts, print a copy of the last one, or take a picture of the bottles and print that out and put that as a hard copy in case, for instance, you have blood pressure issues and you run out the door with your blood pressure med and you drop it in the water, and now you can't find it. When you get to a safe area, a FEMA camp, a Red Cross facility, a National Guard shelter, you can go to the medic and say, "Hey, my family member requires this." There's a process, and I've done shelter ops, fortunately not as a evacuee, but as the guy processing them in. And if you have that, that's immensely helpful, because you have no idea how in a shelter you get families and friends and people who need help, and you get homeless and drug addicts and all sorts of crackheads too. And we won't turn people away unless they're being destructive. But people will come up, "I need oxy," or "I need tramadol," and I'm like, okay. But if you have a document, that can be given to the medical officer or the physician, depending. If it's not a physician, they usually have a tactical medic or a Red Cross nurse, somebody who can look at it and validate it and say, okay, this looks legit. And what is it for? Oh, it's for high blood pressure. They'll look at the name of the product and say, okay, that is the correct application of this. And then they can start moving the wheels. It takes a while, but at least you'll get it, or they'll try to get it to you, which is important. Um, if you lose documents, it makes the shelter operators, and very often it's going to be a mix. Uh, it makes their life, our life, a lot harder. During Harvey, there was a shelter they had set close to the south side of Houston, and so everyone in one area, which we knew was low, and they were going to flood, went to that shelter. And then it kept raining and raining, and then they started to flood, and they're like, crap. So they got all the school buses down there. I mean, Texas was like a school bus city. It was the funniest thing. Um, a big convoy, a Humvee, and like 8 school buses, and they went down there with a police car at the back, and they loaded all the people up and moved them to another shelter. Well, now all the people who were manning that shelter to help the folks were all guardsmen. Well, they went to a Red Cross shelter, so now you had Guard and Red Cross. And then that one got moved to a third one that had FEMA. So now you had National Guard, State Guard, Red Cross, FEMA, police, all mixed together. And it's at that point, even the responders start getting confused. Yeah. Okay, Q. So you know what I'm talking about. And I'm not meaning to be ugly to some folks. I know some folks need meds, but there are people who will steal those meds. I was assigned to a field hospital outside of the airport in Houston, and the cops were so busy that we brought up Border Patrol to do security for us from El Paso and from Brownsville. So we had these 4 Border Patrol guys showed up, and we're like, hey, what's up? And we're all talking, and one of the local cops came to brief them and said, we've got gang A over here, gang B over here, and you've got a hospital facility with a lot of narcotics. And then there was a shooting. Somebody shot a looter in their house who was attacking their wife. And of course, being Texas, if you get caught as a looter, chances are it's going to end badly for the looter. When they heard that report over the radio, they were like, So they put body armor. These guys had their short M4s, and we had 2 at the main gate and 2 inside. And all of a sudden, we had no more people being weird at the field hospital. But up until that point where they actually had to puff up a bit, we had folks were just walking in randomly through the grass, through the fence, and we'd stop and be like, have you registered? You have to register. Oh, no, I just need meds. No, that's not how this works. You have to go to the front. You get a wristband. We register you. And then they'd say no, and they'd leave. And it was like, ooh. So, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. And that's another thing. If you have special needs, like you want to lock those meds, having gone through that, make sure you tell them. The Red Cross, and typically, you'll be honest with you, the Red Cross is the best. They set the standard for shelter ops. Like even FEMA is mimicking what Red Cross does because they're so good at what they do because they've done it for, 120 years. If you have stuff that needs to be secured, talk to them. The shelter manager will try to make it happen. Also, if you get stuck in a shelter for whatever reason, and you have a skill set, let that be known. If you're a nurse, if you speak multiple languages, you're an engineer, you're an electrician, tell them, hey, look, I'm here, my family's on bunks 3, 4, 5, and 6, but I'm an electrician, I'm a plumber if you need me. 1, that makes you very valuable. 2, if they include you in kind of the helper group, because they'll have the people assigned to the shelter, and then they'll have volunteers from the people in the shelter to help. You kind of get kept in the loop on a lot of stuff. But in any case, yeah, if you set that book out, make sure you have hard copies of those scripts, or at least pictures of the script with the name of the person and the type of script and how many milligrams. Okay, so you've been on both sides of that, Q. So you understand what I'm talking about, yeah. And it's scary, and keep in mind the people operating, especially the emergency shelters, right? Because you never know what you're going to get. Um, like in Katrina, they thought they had it under control and the levees failed. And all of a sudden you went from 5,000 displaced people to 50,000 displaced people like that. It was literally 2 hours. And they were all going, holy hell, what have we done? Um, Also, depending on what state you're in, and this is not just for you guys, if you have family in these areas, in Texas and Louisiana, they have an ETN system. So what it is, it's a wristband with a barcode. So if you're with a family group, what you do, you register and they give you a barcode. So you become like an Amazon box, but for a shelter. I'm not being funny. That's literally how it works. And it's super helpful because after Katrina, they were just shipping people out so fast that, an elderly person wound up in Tacoma, but the the adult children wound up in LA, someone wound up in Dallas, somebody's kid was in New York City. They had no idea where family members were. People were freaking out. It took them months to find. I think the last family got reunited 8 months later. It was that bad. So they implemented ETN. That was a painful lesson from Katrina in Louisiana. And it's a barcode. It's a big yellow band. God, I wish I had one. Uh, and what they do, they scan your driver's license, or you give them your name, number, and information. They put you in. Then you can assign your family. So, for instance, Q, you'd be a great example. If you go to an emergency evacuation, you say, I need to be evacuated. My car got flooded. They'll say, okay, well, this is the standby area. They'll register you, right? Uh, Q, and then they'll say, okay, register child one, child two, cousin, aunt, and then they assign all of them to Q. So when the bus becomes available, the loaders who are kind of trained to load people together will be like, okay, Q plus four. And then they will scan. And if one of you is missing, it flags the scanner going into the bus. And they're like, okay, we're missing person number 6. And that's important so you don't get separated, especially if you have family who are elder and who may be losing their senses because of their age, or you have anyone with a disability and illness that needs to be supervised, needs to get their insulin shot. Try to stick together. Talk to the shelter folks, the National Guard, the state responders. They're trained for it. And if you can help, that infinitely makes their life easier. And they'll also make a point of trying to make sure you're taken care of because you're helping them. Yeah, I don't know if Washington has it. If I can find a picture of it, I'll put it somewhere. I might have to put it on Instagram. But yeah, so remember, hurricane season starting soon. There's already been some tropical depressions out there. And oh, I don't have a bug in my soda. That's good. So, does anyone have any questions as far as the hurricanes and the evacuation process I kind of described? Again, it's best to have everything lined up before. And remember, hurricanes are slow-moving things typically, right? The fastest time, and actually I got hit by that hurricane, Lily deflated halfway in the Gulf and then became a hurricane again, and we still had 48 hours. And it came and whacked the crap out of us. We were in Louisiana at the time, but we saw it coming. Things like tornadoes, those are like tornado. You kind of know the storm's coming, and I know in the middle of the U.S. they've gotten really good at trying to predict that kind of stuff. But a flash flood, a dam giving out, which apparently happened somewhere on the East Coast recently. Excuse me, stuff like that. All of a sudden, you got 3 feet of water in the house. So having the bug out book, keep it high, having the backups of your personal papers, your documents, your meds. And when you get new scripts, just scan them, put them on the computer, and put them in the drive. So you can take your laptop too. Take your laptop with you, but also take your thumb drive. And if you can make hard copies, so much better, because you have those hard copies. Like I said, I got a book of insurance, and I have a book of personal papers, and then I have a miscellaneous book. And I need to consolidate them because they're kind of like all half full. And that's kind of a pain in the butt. So I'm going to take the 3 books and make them into 1 or 2. But the whole idea was, after we saw Katrina, and we were in Houston already. We had already left Lafayette, Louisiana, and our friends were getting clobbered in Katrina. I mean, they were flooded out. We were trying to figure out where they could go because it wasn't even like you could stay with me, but you can't get here. Like the bridges were down. It was a mess. So you have that. Don't. It's tough to say, do you stay or do you go? I tried to evacuate for Rita. It turned out not to be needed for where I lived at the time, but it was a fiasco on the roads. I would so much rather be caught in a hurricane in my own house than in my car in a stuck highway. But you may not have that choice. So if you can, go to your local flood district, or your city council may have it. I know in Texas it would be your flood district. They have flooding maps, which will tell you how many inches of water would go for a 50-year, 25-year, 100-year flood and what it would reach. If you don't have flood insurance, even if you're not in a flooding zone, if you're close to one, do it anyway. It's not that much more a year. And the reason is, standard homeowner insurance will cover you from water coming from above. So you get rained on, uh, or the wind blows open your roof and the water gets inside, stuff like that. Anything coming up from the ground is not covered unless you have flood insurance. And if you don't have flood insurance, and I think it ranges depending on the size of your property from 400 to 700 a year, um, you're going to get, you're not going to be covered. And that would be a shame if, you're like, I'm not in a floodplain, but then like a bayou gets backed up and you get water in your house anyway. And they're like, well, technically that's a flood. It came from the ground up, not from the sky down. Even though technically the water came from the sky, but the flooding came from below, not from above. You're not covered. Um, and that's a hit. We walked some properties in the part of Houston, and it was a lot of rental houses, and a lot of the people just unaware of that. And it was sad. We went in there, they had no sheetrock. Most of them told me they didn't have furniture, and a lot of them were immigrant families who were working, doing their annual work, because a lot of them have work papers from like Mexico, Guatemala. They come up, they work, they go home. And they said, we couldn't go home, we don't have the money, and we have no furniture, we're living on like inflatable mattresses. uh, Try to avoid that if you can. The worst case is if your house gets that devastated, you got money to buy a new home and go somewhere else. uh, but again, it is a cost. So, but be aware of that. Flood insurance will cover water from the ground up. If you get that water leaking down from above, that most standard homeowner insurance will cover it. Talk to your insurance guy and ask, or girl, and ask him, hey, how does this work? What is my insurance cover if I get flooded? And that goes not just for hurricanes. If the river overflows, if the daggone water main breaks down the street and it puts a foot of water in everyone's home and you don't have flood insurance, guess what? That's a flood. Now you can sue the city, but good luck with that. That'll take 6 months. In the meantime, you have no sheetrock and mold. So do some homework on that. Definitely set your papers up for hurricane season. It looks like we're, God's willing, kind of squashing the COVID thing. But make sure, you have your scripts. You have, they'll be moving folks, and I'm sure they're going to do everything they can to keep people safe. Have those documents, have the scripts. Uh, if you have rain clothing, keep it together in one corner of the house if you have to run out the door. Um, Again, most of the time you'll know these storms are coming. Uh, even if they suddenly appear in the Gulf or in the coast, you still got 24, 48 hours. But pay attention, make a habit. When I lived on the coast, I still do it. Watch the news morning and night and just listen to the weather. Um, those of you who follow me on Instagram and saw my short yesterday, we were getting hail over here. We didn't get it too bad. We had wicked wind and it blew all my stuff all over. But, a little city not an hour from us, they had base softball and ping pong and pool cue sized hail, stuff like that. I mean, stuff if you threw it at your friend, they'd be really pissed at you. and it broke windshields, it killed chickens. It was rough. So take some time, and it doesn't have to be a stressful thing. You can even do it with the family. Hey, kids, bring me your school ID, scan the school ID. Oh, Q, I'm great. I didn't know the pharmacies would do that. That's a great idea. So Q Kitchen just posted, if you didn't see the comment, she called the pharmacy and asked them to print hard copies of the meds. Now, what I do, if you can, scan them if you have a scanner, or you can use, if you have a newer iPhone, the notes, if you click the little plus at the bottom, has, add note, whatever, and then it has scan. There's a scan option in there. Scan it, and it'll say page 1, page 2, page 3, and it'll make them into a PDF for you. I found that out a couple of months ago. I thought it was the coolest thing. And then you can email it to yourself. Now you have it up on the cloud too. But yeah, talk to your doctors, scripts, anything important you may need, marriage certificates, car titles, stuff like that. Now, keep in mind, if you are a licensee of a pew, I will tell you 90% of the time they will not allow the pew in the shelter. And that's just a standing rule, and it's not being ugly to the Second Amendment, but you get stupid people in the shelter who try to steal stuff. And plus, you figure there are a lot of people who are upset and kind of tense, and so they won't allow it. If you have one, leave it with a friend or lock it in the trunk of your car. I actually have a safe built into my F-150, so I can put, and it was meant because, again, the roaming prepper, I'm all over the place. We make a business trip to Dallas. I bring the wife. We're meeting a couple of clients or colleagues for dinner. My wife doesn't have to bring everything. She brings her iPad and her ID, and she can stick everything in the safe. I lock it. It's attached to the frame of the truck, so have fun with that. I mean, if they really want it, they'll break into it. It's called a tough box, and they make them for Chevy, Ford, Toyota. Look and see. Not just for pickups. They make them for the SUVs too. But definitely have those scripts, have those docs. Yeah, if you have a printer scanner, and save it to your flash drives. If you have someone you trust, you can also give a trusted family member access to a specific folder with things that you're willing to share, like the scripts. In the event you don't have connection or you lose your docs, you can reach out to them and say, hey, can you please email, fax, transmit copies of the following to this number so the shelter can get them, so they can get the meds you need. So hurricane season should be a little less exciting, although, in 2020, who knew there was a pandemic. Get your stuff in a row. Doesn't have to be a panic. Just do your homework, take your time. I was hoping to do a hurricane series, the business series, business ideas for prepping. Basically, I did a series of how businesses react to situations, and then how you as an individual can use those same concepts for your personal life. But that took a little more time to do than I thought. And then I started the travel series, and so they're kind of overlapping each other. I haven't started the hurricane series yet, so I'm probably going to start it in the middle of hurricane season, which is silly, but so sorry about that, guys. I'll tell you what, traveling on airplanes and trying to do videos can discombobulate you. It makes time go by, but it screws you up a little bit, especially when you switch time zones and you become a zombie on the other end of the flight. And you're like, oh, God. But in any case, guys, take some time. Remember, we do have hurricane season. After hurricane season, it tends to be a dry season on the West Coast. Remember, California got scorched. Did Oregon and Washington get burned up too? I remember they got scorched pretty good too. So keep in mind, you're going into the southeast U.S. is going to see tropical stuff, and the Northwest is going to start seeing that more drier season later in hurricane season, and you're going to start seeing those fires pop up. And that bug out book works for a fire. It works for an earthquake. It works for tornadoes. Try and get your stuff in a row. It doesn't have to be a panic. Dedicate a couple hours a week to doing this. And that way, when you get there, you're ready, you're good to go. And at least you have that peace of mind of knowing, okay, I can run to the lockbox, the safe, the closet, grab the books, and go. I would also, in advance, print the phone lists, the physical phone lists of people who you would want to be in touch with, family, friends. Like I was joking earlier, my brother, he and I are real tight. Um, so if your cell phone dies, you can get a borrowed phone. Oh, you already have active fires. Holy heck. So yeah, Q Kitchen just pointed out they already have active fires. So you kind of, stuff happens. But take the time, and it's evolutionary, guys. Don't freak out. You'll make a little book, and then you'll see my book, or like, you know, um, Papa Prepper, or Angry Prepper, and you'll see someone who's been doing it for years, and they have this big old book, and you're like, no, don't freak out. It's evolutionary. You have no idea how many times I will redo things. I'll hear something or learn something new, very often from questions like we're getting now, and I'll go, I should have done that. That's a great idea. And then I start changing it. So you'll learn, it's evolutionary. Take the time to learn and reach out. For the most part, all the people I thanked at the beginning of this live stream that have helped me along the way, they're very collaborative. So if you reach out and with a legitimate question like, hey, what would you recommend? How many jars of peanut butter, whatever, I'm being silly. They will happily, if they can get around to it. Remember, the big channels, it's a lot of incoming emails and texts, and they get swamped. But they'll try to reach out and talk to you. And, I always try to do this. Is really why I do this, because I've had so many people ask me questions over the years. How do I get ready for this? How do I get ready for that? And I'm like, I should just do YouTube videos and explain it, and then I can help lots of people. So again, recapping on the hurricane stuff, bug out book, very good idea, or at least backup drive. If you can put them on the cloud, have someone you trust have access to the cloud drive, or if you want, you can even mail them a copy of the book. Um, Also, you may want to talk to people in advance as to where you can go if you have to leave. If you get forced out of the home, where are you going to go? Right? I have relatives who live on the coast, and most of them at this point are now preppers too. So it's like, okay, if you have to come, you come to me under these if this situation happens, you come this way, or you meet me, say, in Dallas, and I'll meet you in Dallas. I'll get the dog and the kids, and then you and your wife can go back and battle the situation at home. But I've got your kids, so they're safe. And work together, collaborate. Again, I'm blessed. My daughter's a vet tech, and I mean, I've literally seen her save dogs that have been hit by cars, shot, stabbed by arrows. I mean, you name it. Both my sons are military. Like, if the zombies showed up tomorrow, my kids, not worried about them. I've been blessed, and they're good people, and I say that very happily, because sometimes you fight, the kids aren't don't play nice. But I've been blessed, and they're smart. They're thinking. They ask me questions even now. And my youngest one, the cowboy, he's like, I'll figure it out on the fly, and he's always done it. So in any case, he's I'm not worried about him. But yeah, talk to your family members. Make sure they know. Hey, look, if something happens to you, you come here. If something happens to me, I'll go there. And then when you do that, you kind of are thinking bigger, and you're like, okay, make sure if you guys come over here, bring 2 weeks of food, and I'll try and store a little extra rice, and you can kind of work together, so you can kind of help each other out in an emergency. Um, Something that actually happened, we had friends who got hurt, and during Harvey, I didn't get flooded. I got trapped, but his house got clobbered, and he had gone back to his residence, but it was all screwed up. And I was like, do you have something to cook with? He had a camping stove, but all his food, he couldn't get out fast enough. All his food got ruined. So I took some of my dehydrated stuff and a 5-gallon water and brought it to him. And then, another guy from the unit brought over a first aid kit. So, we were able to, from our being prepared, we were able to help others who got hit with something so unexpected. They lost preps. So, prep with that in mind, that you're not only prepping for yourself, you may be able to help someone else who may then be able to return that favor at a future time. But keep the basics going. Again, the food, the water, good. Keep some stash of clothing, or Try to keep your laundry up to date as best you can. I know if you have kids like I did, that's a challenge. Um, have a physical phone list, books. My folks looks 2.5. Okay, Q. That's a great example. You have skill sets within the family and friends. That's great. Also, remember if you're prepping, and this is something I covered in the business for preparedness. Businesses when they buy, they'll buy in bulk, or they'll buy in partnership with other companies. So if store A, B, and C are in different markets, but they all need the same product, the three companies may buy one large shipment together, split the cost, and then split the goodies. You can do that too. So if one, I tell this to the college kids that have reached out to me. You want to prep, but you're like in a dorm room, an apartment, you limited budget and limited money. All of you go to Costco, agree on a list, buy the list, whoever has the card pays for it, and then Venmo that kid the money, and then divvy up the goodies. Now all of you have preps, and it didn't break your bank. If nothing else, they have hangover noodles for Saturday morning when they wake up and realize what they've done to themselves. And we've all been there, I'm sure, at some point or other. So yeah, work with others, try to figure out a good way to help each other out and get those basics in line. And don't freak out. Look, just starting work for 72 hours, then from 72 work toward a week. And this may take a while. The 72 may be easy. You do it in one week. You're like, hey, I got 72 hours of stuff. Then you try and push it to a week, and you're like, I had to stretch that out for a bit. That's okay. Q, what I did for my preps, because we had a big home in Houston. Out in West Texas, the subdivision lots are small or smaller. So I had to give away a lot of stuff. And plus, it's an arid environment, so I had to store more water. Whereas on the coast, there was streams and bayous that have natural water. So I had to completely learn a new way of prepping very quickly. And what I wound up doing is dry goods. I was getting mason jars and putting like beans, rice, and whatnot, and putting an O2 absorber. If you have a food saver, you can do that too and suck a vacuum on them. Those things will last forever, and they stack. There are also on the market, God, I can't remember the brand, that you can attach the little thing from the food saver and suck the air out, and it'll preserve rice for like 10 years or something. And then the good thing about those is you can reseal them, right? So you open them, you use some product, you can close it, pull the vacuum on it again, and it's preserved. If nothing else, it keeps bugs out. The pint mason jars have been great because I can stack them, and but you don't want to go too high. So if they do fall over, you don't have broken glass everywhere in rice. Um, uh, Mason jars have worked really well for me. If you want to stack water, there's these things called a water cube. I have the stupid 5-gallon one that looks like a gas can, but it's blue. But that's goofy looking. There's a water cube, and it has a little spigot, looks like a Kool-Aid dispenser. And you can fill those with tap water. And remember, before an emergency, if you know there's going to be a freeze that might take, or windstorm, firestorm that'll take out power, fill up the water, not just for drinking, but for flushing the potty. My daughter in Houston had all the preps in the world and forgot the flushing water. So she said they were able to figure it out, but the first couple of days it got a bit raunchy in the apartment because they were like, because they couldn't flush. So, but you can stack those, and you can stack them empty, or keep one full and one empty, and then that goes vertical. What I would recommend if you're in a limited space in an apartment, try to use a vertical methodology for your storage, because we naturally, humans, we tend to go side to side. Our eyes are set like that. It's just a biological thing. So we like to set things sideways so we can see it all. I bet if you look in one of your closets, you're going to see you have a bunch of space up above. So stack them that way and see what you can get away with it without being scary to the point you're going to drop stuff on your own head, because you don't want that. Oh, your food saver died. They were on sale on Amazon last week. The good ones too, like the 4400 series, were like $120. I bought mine during the Rona. They went on sale out of nowhere. I don't know why, and I was like, okay, click. If not Amazon, yeah, you could put flushing water in your tub, And if you can seal the tub, then if you have a separate shower, you can take a big spaghetti pot, move the pot to the shower, and take a kind of spaghetti pot bath with a solo cup in the shower. And oh, you filled every last inch of space in closets under beds. Oh, I have to think about that one. Now I got my engineering mind going, saying, okay, well, how do we get more in there? We don't have an answer for that one. I would recommend Target recently put out this new line of, because my wife is using it for her arts and crafts room. These she's quite a seamstress, which that's another skill that is really valuable. God, it's kind of like a clicky Tupperware, but they stack and they're clear so you can see what's in them. They're not those stupid Tupperwares that you can't see what's inside. You may want to try a different type of storage system or a different type of Tupperware that you can stack or squish together or click. And you know, if you can't fit anymore, then what I would recommend is there are a couple of things you can do. You can get a storage unit. I know people in like New York City do that, but that comes with a cost, and then you have to go there to get stuff and bring it back, which exposes you to the street and risk. Your other option would be to go have them hold extra for you. So you say, hey, I'm going to order this on Amazon or whatever, but I'm going to have it sent to your Sam's or your house. And can you just hold it for me and just tell them to Sharpie the date they got it so you know when the date purchased was? So if you get like a Mountain House, you know, the bucket, you could tell them, hey, I'm going to ship this to you this month. And can you just put it in the garage or something? And they'll stack it in there. And that way, you know, if you have to retreat, you're not going to be an overly big burden to them because you already got stuff staged there. Yeah, there are a few ways to do it. If you're really seriously running out of space, then yeah, you may have to see if some of the people you may have to retreat to might be able to help you out there. But yeah, and storing different stuff. I don't know if you all saw my Instagram a few months ago. If you saw my Instagram a few months ago, but my ammo stash, because I used to shoot competitively, collapsed. And yeah, Gabriel, if you go to an off-site storage, you can even, like, I travel to certain cities a lot for business and family, and I'm actually thinking, my fear being the roaming guy is I'm going to get caught in some kind of situation while I'm not at home. And if you think about it, if there's some like an EMP type of thing or something like that happens, there's a good possibility you're not going to be home, right? So if I'm on a business travel and I know there's certain cities I go to like every month, I'm actually pondering the same thing, getting like a 5x5 or the smallest storage available, which would be the least cost, and just put a bag, some food, you know, some basic like camping for the night kind of stuff. But yeah, that's offsite preps are tough. And yeah, so the ammo, the ammo. I'm a competitive skeet shooter. I was. I stopped for a bit. I'm getting back into it now. And I was trying to reorganize, and I tripped on the corgi because apparently that's the purpose of a corgi in the world, is to trip its owner. And for those of you who've never seen a corgi, they're 30 pounds of muscle with stubby legs that move very fast. Um, and I tripped on her, and then I tried to go forward, and I crashed into it. And there were 9 mils mixed with 45s, mixed with shotgun shells. The 22s went everywhere. It was a freaking nightmare. That took me about, that was a day and half a day. I basically poured myself a rum and coke and started picking up bullets and shells everywhere. Um, and it was the stash I had because we had a shoot scheduled that got canceled because of the Rona. So I'm like, oh, well, I have bullets. I'll just put them over here. And yeah, and I tripped on the dog and they went everywhere. For the record, the dog ran out. She's like, I don't know what just happened. I'm gone. Bye. Which is, you notice dogs and children, they break something, they're gone, right? You have to find them. They're like, something's wrong. But in any case, yes, Q, I would recommend climate controlled if you can. I hate a Chihuahua that does that to me. Yeah. Uh, well, what's funny, I'm OCD about the storage of the pews, but the ammo, because we moved and we had a detached garage and a bigger home, so I had a boatload of storage, and now I don't because everything's in one house and it's a smaller home. And so I was trying this freaking fly. I'm going to kill him later. I was trying to figure out a better way to do with the space I do have, and I had a collapse. So yeah, that's exactly what dogs do. By the way, if you have to get a smaller dog, they're a little pricey. The corgis are probably the most pleasant puppies I've ever seen. Now, they do like to chew, so just go to Home Goods, get like $500 of toys or something, and just put one out every other day because they'll kill it in 48 hours. Super social. Their bark is that of a much larger dog. I've had people knock on the door, the dog starts barking, I open, and they're like, "That's a corgi." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I thought you had a lab or a shepherd in here because it's a booming bark." Also, if you have a homestead, if you have animals, they love to herd, and they're very good at it. That's what they're bred for. That's why they cut the tails so the cattle don't step on the tails. Unfortunately, they'll try and herd things like you, your children, your groceries. They'll also try to herd the cat, which the cat does not like, and then there's fighting. Um, but they're probably the most pleasant and fun critters I've owned, and we've rescued so many dogs in my life. And I mean, we've rescued a lot of animals, which is part of the reason my daughter's a vet tech, because she's always around critters. And by far, the corgis are the most fun critters. Them and the papillons, but some papillons are very opinionated and they become butt heads. Both herding breeds, both small, and they hear everything. So if you need a smaller dog that's a good watchdog, those are two breeds, but they're not. The corgis aren't overly yippy like a Chihuahua, where they go beep 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 all the time and they make you crazy. But yeah, so I have to reorganize all the ammo. So I'll be doing that. I might do that later today. But in any case, guys, I'm gonna have to get the dogs out for a walk, or they'll tear up the kitchen. But anyway, once again, thank you, Six Shooter. If he gets to see this later, I won the raffle thing he did, and I did get it, and the little strap thingy that goes with it. So I'll do an unboxing, and you guys can watch me blind myself with the flashlight later on. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them down below, guys and girls. If in my mind, the more people know how to handle emergencies, the better we all are. Gabrielle, Q, Jennifer, everyone who was on here, thank you very much. Godspeed if you're traveling. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and pray for our soldiers overseas and our sailors and airmen. They got a tough job, and it's not so safe at the moment. So let's keep them in your prayers. You guys take care. Thanks for coming. Bye.